Hello everyone. Our topic for today is corporate level strategy. Let us talk about how we can create value through diversification. After this chapter, you should have a good understanding of corporate strategy and its various approaches, how managers can create value through diversification initiatives in other means, and lastly, let us understand how managerial behaviors can erode the creation of value. In business level strategy, we discussed in chapter 5, it deals with the question of how to compete in a given industry. Corporate level strategy addresses two related issues. These are what businesses should we compete in and how can these businesses be managed in a way to create synergy or cooperation that is more valuable by working together than if they were freestanding units. Let us define first what is corporate level strategy. So this is a strategy that focuses on gaining long-term revenue, profits, and market value through managing operations in multiple businesses, determining how to create value through entering new markets, introducing new products, or developing new technologies is a vital issue in strategic management, but maintaining a focus on creating value is essential to long-term success. So as you know, research shows that the most acquisitions of public corporations result in value destruction rather than value creation. Therefore, these questions must be continually asked and answered. What businesses should a corporation compete in and how can these businesses can be managed so they can create synergy that is to create more value by working together. What is diversification? Diversification is the process of firms expanding their operations by entering new businesses. Diversification initiatives can be done through merger and acquisitions, strategic alliances, joint ventures, or internal development. So it must be justified by the creation of value shareholders. Firms typically pay high premiums when they acquire a target firm. So why should company even bother with diversification initiatives? The answer is synergy, which means working together, and synergistic effects should be multiplicative. It means that 1 plus 1 should equal more than 2. How can diversification work? A firm may be diversified into related and unrelated businesses. When we say related businesses, these are those that share resources such as production, facilities, distribution channels via vertical integration. Unrelated businesses have few similarities in products or industries. However, the corporate office can add value through such activities as robust or strong information systems or superb human resource practices. Many firms that diversify into related areas benefit from information technology expertise in the corporate office. Similarly, unrelated diversifiers often benefit from the best practices of sister businesses, even though their products, markets, and technologies may differ dramatically. An example would be a corporate parent with strong support activities in the value chain such as information system or human resource practices. Let us discuss clearly what is related diversification. Related diversification is when a firm enters in a different business in which it can benefit from leveraging core competencies, sharing activities, or building market power. What is economies of scope? It is a cost savings from leveraging core competencies or sharing related activities among businesses in a corporation. For example, let's say that you are a shoe manufacturer. You produce men's and women's sneakers. Adding a children's line of sneakers would increase economies of scope because you can use the same production equipment, supplies, storage, and distribution channels to make a new line of products that will further reduce the cost of production on all your shoes. How about core competencies? It is a firm's strategic resources that reflect the collective learning in the organization. Example of core competencies are innovation of cutting-edge products, quality and reliability, exceptional customer service, and stay flexible to stay competitive. Sharing activities means that having activities of two or more businesses, value change done by one of the businesses. A firm can also enjoy greater revenues if two businesses attain higher levels of sales growth combined than either company could attain independently. So this is what we call the synergistic effect. So firms can also enhance the effectiveness of their differentiation strategies by means of sharing activities among business units. Okay? A shared order processing system, for example, may permit new features and services that a buyer will value. Related business gain market power by pooled negotiating power and vertical integration. So when we say market power, it's firms' abilities to profit through restricting or controlling supply to a market or coordinating with other firms to reduce investment. When we say pool negotiation power, it is the improvement in bargaining position relative to suppliers and customers. So be careful. Though acquiring related businesses can enhance a corporation's bargaining power, but it must be aware of the potential for retaliation. Vertical integration is an expansion or extension of a firm by integrating proceedings or successive production processes. Vertical integration occurs when a firm becomes its own supplier or distributor. How to diversify through leveraging core competencies. Core competencies is a course strategic resources that reflect the collective learning in the organization. This collective learning includes how to coordinate diverse production skills, integrate multiple streams of technologies, and market diverse products and services. Core competencies is the glue that binds existing businesses together. It can be achieved by transferring accumulated skills and expertise across business units in a corporation. So there are three um, criteria to meet core competencies. Number one, it must enhance competitive advantage by creating superior customer value. How can they do that? By building on existing skills and innovations in a way that appeals to customers as at like what we had given in the case of Apple. Secondly, different businesses in the firm must also be similar in at least one important way related to the core competencies. It's not essential that products or service themselves be similar. It is essential that one or more elements in the value chain require similar essential skills. For example, with the IBM's computing power, in your book, page 177 of Strategy Spotlight 6.1. And lastly, core competencies must be difficult for competitors to imitate or find substitute. Specialized technical skills acquired during a company's work experience, such as at Amazon, okay, how they were able to manage their inventory, logistic, or distribution system. How diversification works through sharing activities. Remember, we mentioned that sharing activities is having activities of two or more businesses. Value chains done by one of the businesses. Firms share common manufacturing facilities, distribution channels, and sales force. It can provide pay-ups, okay, by cost savings and revenue enhancement. Cost savings through elimination of jobs, facilities and related expenses, or operational cost. Example, what General Motors had done, they use shared engineering group and shared vehicle platforms across Chevrolet, Buick, and GMC brand. Revenue can be enhanced by one company acquires another from the same industry in the same country. Like Starbucks has acquired small firms including L'Avalanche and Tivana, and as well as Evolution Fresh. Now, let us discuss how companies achieve related diversification through market power. Market power is firms' abilities to profit through restricting or controlling supply to a market or coordinating with other firms to reduce investment. It works through pooled negotiating power and vertical integration. When we say pooled negotiating power, the improvements in bargaining position relative to suppliers and customer. So similar businesses working together or the affiliation of the businesses with a strong parent can strengthen an organization's purchasing cloud. So it means greater bargaining power with suppliers and customer. If you can see in Nestle company, they have the large purchases from suppliers and customers. However, we mentioned a while ago that managers must carefully evaluate how the combined businesses may affect relationship with actual and potential customers, so as suppliers and competitors, because sometimes it may be affected, like what happened with the PepsiCo when they diversified in fast food industry. They acquired KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and they became the part of Yum brand, which McDonald's refused beverages from Pepsi Cola or PepsiCo because it supplies their enemy. When we say vertical integration, it is expansion or extension of the firm by integrating preceding or successive production processes. It occurs when a firm becomes its own supplier or distributor. The firm can incorporate more processes toward the original source of raw material. So that is the backward integration, or it can go directly toward the ultimate consumer, that is forward integration, like acquiring the company that were once its supplier. Example, in the strategy spotlight 6.2, you can see there that Tesla vertically integrates into battery production to ensure adequate supply of batteries as it expands its productions of vehicle. In making vertical integration decisions, five issues should be considered. Number one, if the performance of organizations in the vertical chain is satisfactory, it may not in general be appropriate for a company to perform these activities itself. Number two, are there activities in the industry value chain presently being outsourced or performed independently by others that are a viable source of future profits? Number three, is there a high level of stability in the demand for the organization's products? Number four, does the company have the necessary competencies to execute the vertical integration strategies? And lastly, will the vertical integration initiatives have potential negative impacts on the firm's stakeholders? holders. However, even if a firm international strategy outsourcing value chain activities to companies that are doing a credible job, it may be missing out on substantial profit opportunities. Take note, high demand or sales volatility are not the conducive to vertical integration. With a high level of fixed costs in plant and equipment, as well as operating costs that a company endeavors toward vertical integration. Widely fluctuating sales demand can either strain resources, this is in the times of high demand, or result in unused capacity in times of low demand. Finally, successfully executing strategies of vertical integration can be exceedingly difficult and can require significant competencies. In addition, managers must carefully consider the impact that vertical integration may have on existing and future customer, suppliers, and competitors. Another way to understand vertical integration is through transaction cost. Transaction cost perspective is a perspective that the choice of the transactions governance structure such as vertical integration or market transaction is influenced by transaction costs. So when we say transactions, it includes search, negotiating, contracting, monitoring, and enforcement costs associated with each choice. Transaction costs are the sum of the above costs. So these transaction costs can be avoided by internalizing the activity. In other words, by producing the input in-house. However, vertical integration gives rise to administrative costs as well. Coordinating different stages of the value chain now internalized within the firm causes administrative costs uh, to go up. Decisions about vertical integrations are therefore based on a comparison of transaction costs and administrative costs. So if transaction costs are lower than administrative costs, it is best to resort to market transactions and avoid vertical integration. On the other hand, if transaction costs are higher than administrative costs, vertical integration must becomes an attractive strategy. Now, let's move on with diversification through unrelated business. Okay? We mentioned that unrelated diversification occurs when a firm is entering into a different business that has a little horizontal interaction with other businesses of a firm. Benefits of unrelated diversification come from the vertical or hierarchical relationships or creation of synergies from the interaction of the corporate office with the individual business unit. So there are two sources of synergies, parenting advantage and restructuring. Parenting advantage is the positive contributions of the corporate office to a new business because of expertise and support provided and not because of substantial changes in assets, capital structure, or management. Restructuring means this is the intervention of the corporate office in a new business that substantially changes the assets, capital structure, and or management. It includes selling of parts of the business, changing the management, reducing payroll and unnecessary source of expenses, changing strategies and infusing the new business with new technologies, processes, and reward system. Another method under restructuring is portfolio management, wherein it assesses the competitive position of a portfolio business within a corporation, and it also about suggesting strategic alternatives for each business, and identifying priorities for the allocation of resources across the businesses, and the use of Boston Consulting Group's growth or share metrics. So take a look in the screen in your Exhibit 6.4, the Boston Consulting Group Portfolio Matrix. So there are different categories of business implications: stars, question marks, cash flows, and dogs. In the BCG approach, each of the firm's strategic business units is plotted on a two-dimensional grid in which axes are relative market share and industry growth rate. For relative market share, it is measured by the ratio of the business unit size to that its largest competitor. And for the growth rate, it is estimated from market data. So the fourth quadrant of the grid include the start, which means the firms with long-term growth potential that should continue to receive substantial investment funding. For the question marks, the the strategic business units operating in high growth industries with relatively weak market shares, where resources should be invested in them to enhance their competitive positions. And the third quadrant, or the third category, is the cash cows, strategic business units with high market shares in low growth industries that have limited long run potential but represent a source of current flows to fund investment in stars and question marks. And the last one is the dogs, the strategic business units with weak positions and limited potentials. Most analysts recommend that they be divested. Despite the potential benefits of portfolio models, there are also some limitations. So the limitations of portfolio models are: number one, comparing strategic business units on only two dimensions. Number two, viewing each strategic business units as a standalone entity and ignoring synergies. Number three is treating the process as largely mechanical. Number four, relying on strict rules for resource allocation. And lastly, making overly simplistic prescriptions and ignoring a firm's potential long-term viability. However, such a diversification rationale can at times be justified. We discussed how General Electric has benefited from diversification by lowering the variability or risk in their performance over time. GE has aircraft engines, power generation equipment, locomotive trains, large appliances, healthcare products, financial products, lighting, mining, oil, and gas. So why is GE so many businesses? If you could take a look on their website, GE is widely diversified, although not as greedy as once were. They used to own NBC, the National Broadcasting TV Group, which GE merged with Vivendi to form NBC Universal, but divested this entity in 2011. With this divestiture, it could be argued that GE is the business of imagination, since all its remaining products except for the financial services can be considered offshoots of founder Thomas A. Edison's inventions that made life easier through technology. As the chapter says, GE range of diversification has resulted in stable earnings over time and a very low risk profile. This allows them to borrow money at very favorable rates, money that they in turn use provide financing to buyers of their products. Hence, the financial services division. So, GE's level of diversification does help the company reduce risks. So in these first three sections of the chapter, we address the types of diversification, some are related and unrelated. Now let us talk about the means or ways to attain diversification. So a company can diversify through mergers and acquisitions, strategic alliances and joint ventures, internal development through corporate entrepreneurship, and through new venture development. The most visible and often costly means to diversify is through acquisitions. In Exhibit 6.5 in your book, it illustrates the dramatic volatility in worldwide M&A activity over the last several years. Increase in merger and acquisition activity can indicate market optimism. It is also an indication that markets are willing to finance these transactions. Government policies such as regulatory actions and tax policies can also make the M&A environment favorable because they give and provide some tax exemption. Finally, currently fluctuations can influence the rate of cross-border acquisitions, with firms in countries with stronger currencies being in a stronger position to acquire. So the top four strongest currencies in the world are Kuwaiti dinar, Bahraini dinar, Omani rial, and Jordanian dinar. So you could notice that these countries have a large reservoir of oil that makes their currency powerful in the world. In certain industries, speed is critical. So acquiring is faster than building. Example, Apple acquiring Siri Incorporation. Acquisitions can quickly add new technology to product offerings and meet changing needs. Example of the Cisco systems. Acquisition can help a firm leverage more competency, share activities, and build market power. Example of this one is eBay's acquisition of GSI Commerce, StubHub, and Gmarket allows it to become a full-service provider of online retailing system. M&A can lead to consolidations within an industry, forcing other players to merge. Example, consolidation in the airline industry. Delta to Northwest, United to Continental. So corporations can also enter a new market segments by acquisition, like Fiat acquired Chrysler to gain access to U.S. auto market. Okay, and also the the case study of the Tata Starbucks in India. Here we discuss some of possible drawbacks of mergers and acquisition. This includes the takeover premium can be very high. Example of this is the household international acquisitions of beneficial an 83% premium, and Conseco paid an 82% premium to acquire Green Tree Financial. Sec- Secondly is the competing firms can often imitate any advantages, realize or copy synergies that result from the M&A. The third is managers' credibility and ego can sometimes get in the way of sound business decision. And lastly, cultural issues can doom the intended benefits from M&A endeavors. Example of this is the merger between SmithKline and Beecham Group, and the details of the examples can be found in your book. Corporate managers often find it necessary to divest businesses from their portfolios. Divesting can enhance a firm's competitive position by reducing costs, freeing up resources, enabling management to focus on core business activities and raising cash to fund existing businesses. So we could also draw on research by the Boston Consulting Group to identify 7 principles for successful divestiture. Successful divestments requires a thorough understanding of a business unit's current ability and future potential to contribute to a firm's value creation. Since the decisions to divest involve a great deal of uncertainty, it is difficult to make such evaluations. In addition, because of managerial self-interest and organizational inertia, firms often delay investments of underperforming businesses. So the Boston Consulting Group has identified the above 7 principles for successful divestiture, like removing emotion from the decision, knowing the value of the business you're selling, timing the deal right, maintaining a sizable pool of potential buyers, telling a story about the deal, running the divestiture systematically through a project office, and lastly, communicating clearly and frequently. Strategic alliances and joint ventures are assuming an increasingly prominent role in the strategy of leading firms, both large and small. Such cooperative relationships have many potential advantages. Among these are entry to new markets, like for example, the partnership of Zara's alliance with Tata to enter the Indian market. So Tata is a very large company in India. Reducing manufacture or other costs in the value chain. So this is the alliance between the uh, PGA and LPGA to market golf and negotiate with networks. The third one is developing and diffusing new technologies. There are also some many potential limitations associated with strategic alliances and joint ventures. Problems often arise when there is low trust among the partners and minimal attention given to nurturing close working relationships. So these are limited opportunities for developing synergies and there are not complementary strengths. Trust is very important in doing partnership or strategic alliances. Firms can also diversify by means of corporate entrepreneurship and new venture development called internal development. So when we say internal development, it is entering a new business through investment in new facilities, often called corporate entrepreneurship and new venture development. Internal development is such an important means by which companies expand their businesses. So compared to mergers and acquisitions, firms that engage in internal development capture the value created by their own innovative activities without having to share the wealth with alliance partners or face the difficulties associated with combining activities across the value chain of several firms or merging corporate culture. So on their own, firms can often develop new products or services that are relatively lower cost and this rely on their own resources rather than turning to external funding. However, this may be time consuming, so firms may forfeit the benefits of speed that growth through mergers or acquisitions can provide because you're going to start from the scratch. In addition, firms that choose to diversify through internal development must develop capabilities that allow them to move quickly from initial opportunity recognition to market introduction. We cannot assume that CEOs and top executives are rational beings. They are only human as well. They may not always act in the best interest of shareholders to maximize long-term shareholder value. In the real world, they may often act in their own self-interest. So in this section, let us address some of the managerial motives that can erode rather than enhance value creation. This includes growth for growth's sake, excessive egoism, and the creation of a wide variety of anti-takeover tactics. Managerial motives is when managers acting in their own self-invested interests rather than to maximize long-term shareholder value. Growth for growth's sake, it means managers' action to grow the size of their firms, not to increase long-term profitability, but to serve managerial self-interest. So there is a tremendous allure to mergers and acquisitions, which it can lead to desperate moves by top managers to satisfy investors' demand. They forgot the lower rank position. So they do it for accelerating revenue, sometimes by engaging in an unethical behavior. So when we say egotism, managers' actions to shape their firm's strategic way to serve their selfish interests rather than to maximize long-term shareholder value. Egos can get in the way of synergistic corporate marriage. Like for example, in your book, you could read that John Taines $35,000 furnitures. Okay, the commode. And the last one is the anti-takeover tactic. So these are the manager's actions which avoid losing wealth or power as a result of hostile takeover. Unfriendly or hostile takeovers can occur when the company's stock becomes undervalued. A competing organization can buy the outstanding stock of takeover candidate in sufficient quantity to become a large shareholder. Then it makes a tender offer to gain full control of the company. So you could watch a lot of Korean novellas wherein acquiring one company to another company and like penetrating the management, and then eventually they're going to buy the biggest stock share. Okay, so if the shareholders accept the offer, the hostile firms buy the target company and either fires the target firm's management team or strips them of their power. So these are several anti-takeover tactics. And number one is the green mail. This is a payment by a firm to a hostile party for the firm's stock at premium made when the firm's management feels that the hostile party is about to make a tender offer. The other one is golden parachute. Okay, so it means pre-arranged contract with managers specifying that in the event of hostile takeover, the target firm's managers will be paid a significant severance package. And lastly, the poison pill. So it is used by a company to give shareholders certain rights in the event of takeover by another company. And that would complete and conclude our discussions. I would like to make a short summary of what we had discussed. So we mentioned that creating value through synergy is a challenging part for managing a firm. They find it difficult to create value in merging and acquisition. They face a lot of disadvantage like paying high premiums for the target firms, failing to integrate the activities of the newly acquired businesses into the corporate family, and diversification strategies are easily imitated. That is why this chapter had shown the different strategies under corporate level. Either they enter into areas in which key resources are capable of the corporation that can be shared or leveraged and enter product markets that are dissimilar to their present business. We also mentioned the primary means of diversifying their product to the market by M&A, joint ventures or strategic alliances, and internal development. Finally, we discuss how the behavior of managers can erode shareholder return. That is why it is essential to use a synergy that focuses on gaining long-term revenue, profits, and market value through managing operations in multiple businesses. And I hope that you were able to understand everything the way I presented the topic in simple manner. So if you have any further question, please send a message and I will attend to your query. Thank you. This is your professor, Dr. Christine Joy S. Pao. Have a nice day, everyone.